chosen one. All right, guys. So the dark side is loneliness, man. You're gonna feel a lot of loneliness when you are a chosen one. When you have that connection with the Most High, you're a part of 144,000 because um, you in the world, but you're not of the world. All right, guys. I know I was about to say, but you are in the world, but you're not no longer of the world, right? So your mindset is elevating and it is evolving to more of a spiritual consciousness, right? You tapping into the Christ consciousness, right? Because now you experiencing that loneliness, and that's when you're gonna experience salvation, right? Through loneliness, and then when you experience salvation, God gonna give you elevation, right? You're gonna experience your purpose. So that's the dark side of being a chosen one, man. You're gonna experience a lot of loneliness, but this is what I like about it because the Bible says, "If God be for you, then who can be against you?" You know, and God said He'll be with you even to the end of your days. So God is for you, while you experiencing this loneliness. So really, you're not truly lonely. Spiritually, you're not lonely, but on the planet, yeah, you might be lonely for a period of time or a lot of times. I'm not gonna say all the time, right? Because you're still gonna communicate with people, but a lot of times you're gonna end up being lonely, because a lot of people, they can't connect with you. Their vibration is like much lower than yours. And I'm not saying this to say that you think that you're better than everybody as a chosen one, because I don't think I'm better than nobody, either. I just feel like when you truly have a connection with God, the majority of people, they're not gonna relate to you, and by you having that loneliness, a lot of people, they're not gonna like you either. This is another dark side of being a chosen one. You're gonna have a lot of people that don't like you, right? Because of their own insecurities, because of their vibration is just they had a low vibration. A lot of people is at a very, very low vibration. They you know, a lot of people, like I said, they being influenced by the world. They're not being influenced by God, the God that's within them. But you being influenced by the God that's within you. You keeping God's commandments. You are doing your best to stay on the righteous path, and you're gonna experience that loneliness. But during that loneliness is gonna teach you that you don't need nothing too much or nothing that's outside. You don't need other people's validation. That's what it's gonna teach you. A lot of people that they can't stand being alone for nothing in the world, right? A lot of people, they can't even be alone for within an hour or hours. They can't be alone. They always got to be around somebody. God is gonna teach you that everything starts from within. You're gonna experience that self love through that loneliness as well, right? Because that's how you're gonna truly find the God that's within you, through that loneliness. So by you experiencing this loneliness, this is the dark side of being a chosen one. I say everybody not chosen. Many are called, few are chosen. Everybody is not chosen by God. A lot of people, they talk about chosen ones because it sound good, but the true chosen ones, that's about 144,000. We experience loneliness, but we know for a fact that God said He'll never leave us nor forsake us. He'll be there with us even through to the end of our days. So we don't that's our time to just meditate on God. The Bible says meditate on God daily. So through that loneliness, God dwells in solitude. So we end up you know end up finding out more about God through that loneliness. We end up meditating on God through that loneliness. We end up finding out more about ourselves through that loneliness. We end up elevating through that loneliness. That's the thing. It's a lot of good things that come when it come down to you being lonely. You think loneliness. A lot of y'all think loneliness means you know that you're out of place. But loneliness, through God putting you back in place, right? Because when you had that problem with being lonely, uh, you were taken out of your sovereign capacity. You know, you didn't know who you was. You feel insecure. You know, you was very, very insecure, right? You thought you needed validation from the world, and to experience that loneliness, and you start to get comfortable being loneliness, and you find God. You realize that you only need that validation through the God that's within you. You know, you only need God's validation, not man's or woman's validation, right? You know, that's the dark side about being a chosen one. Another dark side about being a chosen one is fake friends, a fake family members, betrayal. You're gonna experience this as a chosen one, and when it comes down to betrayal with fake friends, you know it's gonna happen. You know, a lot of people they want to be around us chosen ones, just figure out what we got going on. No, it's a lot of scouts that tend to try to come in our life as chosen ones. I noticed that. You know, they don't really be our friend for real. You know, they be trying to compete with us. They be trying to influence us. They be trying to pull us away from God. The Bible says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness." Right? When you have it in your mindset, you're not gonna allow these carnal-minded people that's of the world to pull you away from God. You know, they gonna end up, pulling themselves away from you. So you're gonna experience a betrayal, a disloyalty. People gonna abandon you. A lot of people gonna abandon you. You know, a lot of friends, a lot of family members, they're gonna abandon you. You know, when you are a chosen one. You know, it is what it is. You know, they're gonna expose themselves right in front of you. You know, and God gonna allow. You know, the Bible says let the wheat and the tare grow together, and God to do the separation. So God is gonna do the separation. You know, you just gotta just wait on God and continue to walk by faith and not by sight. You know, that's even coming with you being lonely as a chosen. You gotta walk by faith and not by sight, man. You know, like I said, you're gonna start to realize that God is the only one that's gonna be your family and friend. You know, you're gonna be covered in the blood of God. You know, your immediate family, you know, you being a part of your immediate family bloodline, that's not gonna matter to you no more. You know, you're gonna denounce it spiritually. Once you realize that a lot of your friends, a lot of your family, they're gonna betray you and stuff like that. You know, even Christ, when Christ was on the earth, you know, when he was sitting down, you know, I think it was the Last Supper at the table, he was like, "When are you gonna betray me?" I think Judas, one of them, John or one of them, or Peter, he was like, "Lord, is it I?" You know, one of them, they was like, one of the disciples was like, "Man, is it me?" They got scared, you know, but God gonna show you too who your friend, who your family, and who not. You know, but the ones that's gonna betray you, you know, you gonna already know, like, you know, this person, I already know that this person, like, they not for me. You know, because God gonna give you that spirit of discernment as a chosen one. You know, that's the thing when you chosen. You know, God revealed things to His people. You know, this is what the Bible says. You know, God gonna reveal a lot to you when you are chosen, and you gotta accept it. You gotta accept it. You know, I accept it every single day. It's okay. You know, as long as I'm being genuine, as long as God getting people out my way, right? Because you gonna have to God got to get people out your way in order for you to elevate. Sometimes, you know, it's a test. You know, this whole world, it ain't nothing but a big test, guys. And God, you know, He testing us, and the devil testing us too. So we have to be we have to be mindful. You know, we have to have on the whole armor of God. You know, you got to pass that test. You know, and if you don't, you have to retake it. So it's all about how strong your connection with God, you know. But you're going to experience that, fake friends, fake family on this walk. You know, also, too, the dark side about being, a chosen one is haters. You're gonna have haters. You know, this gonna be the dark side about being a chosen that's part of 100 for the 1,000. You're gonna have haters, you know, and a lot of people, I say a lot of people, they don't have God in them. So they're gonna hate on you to try to bring the God, out of you that's within you. You guys gotta be careful. You guys gotta be careful about, these haters. The wicked gonna watch the righteous, but they can't destroy us, right? Because we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and God got His head around us. God always got a ram in the bush, right? And God's gonna show these haters His wrath in due time. You cannot allow these haters to bring you down. They're gonna try to distract you. They're gonna try to they want you to get out of character. They want you to lose self-control. They want they want your life to be full of chaos and confusion. Because that's what their life is, full of chaos and confusion. Right? Because they don't have God in their life. And these demons, they work